Hey everyone, welcome to the Naked Conversations podcast. I'm your host, Sage Hobbs, author and creator of Naked Communication, and I'm so psyched you're here. This show is all about taking charge of your life in new and inspired ways to create a life you deeply love. It's about being more you in all areas of your life, more courageous, more free, more alive, more naked. I'll be sharing stories and advice from amazing people around the world who are up to incredible things on how they are successfully breaking free from fear and old patterns in order to create incredible relationships and impactful lives so that you can do the same. This is the place to be inspired to live a courageous and naked life. Let's do this. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Naked Conversations. I'm your host, Sage Hobbs, and I am so excited to be back here with you today and doing our solo episode, which is always a bit of story hour on a theme. That's what it is nowadays, at least. If you are new to the show, yay, I'm so psyched that you're here. This is a conversation for how we can show up as women on the planet more self-expressed, more free, more powerfully as who we really are, and create real meaningful connections with those in our lives and make an impact that we really are here to make. So we get quote unquote naked in this show, which is just being real and practicing what it really looks like to peel back the layers of conditioning and messaging in order to really show up as ourselves. So I'm Sage, I'm your host. And today I have a totally raspy voice. That is because I have a cold, and I hope that I don't bust into a coughing fit while I'm recording this one for you. But I actually thought it was super timely to the theme that I wanted to talk about today, which I'll dive into in a moment. Before I do, I just want to invite you to make sure you've checked out my digital home over at sagebhobbs.com. You can also find the show notes for this episode for any resources that I reference at sagebhobbs.com/episode-23. Over on the site, you will pick up like a free guide that I really want everybody to have on how to get what you really want, how to make these kinds of powerful requests that get you a yes more often than not. It's also just an introduction into my work, my book, how to really dive deeper into your relationships, how to get coaching if that's something you've been seeking, if you are a leader or dying to be more of a leader and find that courageous way to show up as yourself more fully in the world, then all of that information's over there on my site at sagebhobbs.com. So please come visit me. It's lonely by yourself out in Digiland, so that's why I love to talk to you here and really feel a sense of connection to those of you who are listening. So today's theme is on self-compassion, and it has just been coming up for me on a personal level and on a business level so much this week that I wanted to hop into the chat here, into this conversation, and bring this topic to you. So I literally climbed out from under a heating blanket to come to my microphone. And the heating blanket like makes me crack up because it feels super old lady-ish. And I don't mean that in a bad way, because I hope to be a beautiful, wise old woman one day. But when my kids gave me a heating blanket for Christmas, I cracked up because they think I'm always cold and I always want to be warmer, and they were so sweet. And I thought, when am I going to use this thing? Well, let me tell you, when you have a cold and you feel like crap and you are on the eve of leaving town for 4 days to celebrate your 40th birthday with a bunch of girlfriends in California, you climb under that heating blanket for days on end and you work from under that heating blanket with your computer. You get up to do your coaching conversations. And mostly that heating blanket has been like my savior and my sweet self-nurturing device. But I wasn't expecting to be down for the count when I have so many new things going on and a trip on the horizon. And it was a really interesting moment of catching myself in self-blame and self-deprecation, in just judging and giving myself a hard time for not being full steam, for not being able to do all the things that were on my quote unquote to-do list this week in preparation for leaving town and in response to the work needs that I had for my business and for my household. So I was laughing because here it was, self-compassion, just once again for me to take on for myself. And then of course, once that was sort of the tickling theme in my head, it came up over and over again this week with clients who, I get a text from a client saying, oh my gosh, I need to connect. I am judging the shit out of myself this week, and here's why. Or another conversation with, oh my gosh, I didn't do the field work that you had assigned me, that we had talked about, and I'm falling out of action. Like, what do I do to get back on the horse? And here I was realizing that this week was meant to be a week that I released an interview episode for you because I've been trying to alternate them, and I've effectively done so since I launched the show. And I have some really cool interviews coming down the pike, but they aren't ready yet. And so I was almost like, oh, I'm just not going to do a show. And then I thought, that is so funny. I'm the only one who made this schedule for myself to do alternating interview, solo show, interview, solo show. And I've been getting some feedback that people love the solo shows, but I was holding myself to this ideal that I was the only one who had created in the first place. So again, instead of making myself wrong, I thought about where I could demonstrate some self-coaching the way I would for the clients who were asking for this support and self-compassion, and give it to myself as well. So Jack Kornfield, who is an author and a Buddhist teacher, has a quote that I love, which is, if your compassion does not include yourself, it is not complete. If your compassion does not include yourself, it is not complete. And I love that because I work with really big-hearted, generous women who, if I asked them if they were compassionate people, unequivocally, hands down, they would all say, yes, of course I'm compassionate. I have a huge heart. But when it comes to how we treat ourselves, we sometimes leave ourselves out of that equation for compassion. So that's what I'm just talking about with you today. Can I invite you to show yourself more compassion every moment in the day-to-day when things are hard, when they're not perfect, when they didn't go as planned, when you're underneath the heating blanket, when the interview isn't ready, when the house isn't totally dialed in before you leave your kids and husband for 4 days? Can we all show ourselves more self-compassion? Can we include ourselves in the compassion that we have generously offered to all the others in our lives? So if you are listening, then you are a part of this conversation around how to live a more naked, self-expressed, powerful, big, authentic life. And what that means is that you're up to things in your life. And I know that about those in my community, the women I work with, the women who listen, the women I follow me on Facebook, even though I'm a sucky Facebooker. If you're up to things in life, you will falter. It's just what happens if you're really playing big, if you're really going for it, if you really want to make a contribution, if you want to have deep, intimate relationships, there will be times when you will falter. You will have your doubts. You will have your fears. Your confidence will be shaky. That is kind of the nature of the ride when you're really going for a naked, self-expressed life. And I really can't say this piece enough, which is I believe that confidence is on a continuum, right? Hopefully at 40, I'm more confident than I was at 30 and 30 more than at 20. And that I just keep learning and growing and expanding. But the more I stretch and grow and expand, I reach new edges and then my confidence gets challenged again. And in those moments, self-compassion. So I work with women who seemingly outwardly are very confident. They run nonprofits, they run companies, they run households. They've done things with their lives. They've had marriages, sometimes more than one, careers, sometimes more than one, families. Their contributions are vast and varying in scale, but they've all engaged with their lives in meaningful ways. And to the outside observer, they seem really confident. I've had one ask me recently who, again, would outwardly seem like she had it all, quote unquote, together. She said, Sage, sort of laughing at herself, are any of the women you work with actually confident? And I said, yes and no. They really, really deeply are. And they're big players. They want to play bigger. So their confidence gets in question sometimes. And in those moments, can we be compassionate so that we can keep growing? Can we be compassionate so we can keep expanding? Can we be compassionate so we can show up more meaningfully, more powerfully in the work that we do and in our vulnerability with our relationships all across the board? When the confidence feels shaky, when there's a new change, and if you listen to last week's episode on change, I'll put a link in the show notes. When there's change that arises, which it inevitably does, can we have some self-compassion to help us move through it? The next level, making a shift to a new thing. All of these are times when we find ourselves sometimes thrown back into this idea of perfectionism, of self-judgment, of making ourselves wrong. I had 2 coaching calls today where these themes came through with these brilliant, incredible women who, by all standards, have done much in their lives and are still doing and creating much in their lives, but they're in different seasons. And they're actually, these women are 2 decades apart in age. And so they're at different seasons in navigating their paths. And through those changes comes those questions of like, can I really do it? And what is it going to look like? And what's the outcome going to be? And am I cut out for this? And what will other people think? Will I disappoint? All of these questions. And I always go back to, we don't know for sure the final destination, but can we go for it anyway and treat ourselves with the same kind of grace and compassion that we would treat those we love, right? Because it makes it way more effective. Whatever you're trying to do, you're going to stay engaged in doing it if you can show yourself kindness, patience, compassion along the way, right? So, here are some of the things to do for that I do. And I'm just going to give you some ideas. And then I'm going to keep this short because I can feel that tickle in my throat coming out. And I don't want to cough my head off to all of you. I'll keep my raspy, sultry voice. So, one of the things I tell people all the time, and again, it sounds so simple, but it's to literally place your hand over your heart and take a few deep breaths. When you just feel that doubt, that fear, that concern, that beating yourself up, making yourself wrong, judging the shit out of yourself, whatever it looks like in your head, can you put your hand over your heart and take 3 really good breaths and just get back to your breathing, your body, your sense of present mindedness, out of that perseverating or out of that stuck on, like, if you're old enough to know what a record is, which I am, if you imagine the groove in a record, sometimes we just deepen the groove again and again when we get into that doubting, making ourselves wrong, judging place. Can we just place our hands over our heart, take a few deep breaths, and bring the attention back to the here and now and not overthink it? And then ask your brain a question, ask yourself a question. Like, our brains like to respond to questions, they're looking and seeking answers. So, what I often ask myself and what I ask clients to ask themselves is, how can I show myself more grace in this moment? Where is there room for more compassion? How can I show myself more grace in this moment? And where is there room for more compassion? If you can disrupt that criticizing and judging and loathing that's going on inside and just ask those questions of yourself with your hand over your heart, you'll be amazed at what might come up for you. Yesterday, when I did that for myself, when I was really stuck for a moment in, oh my gosh, I have so much to do, so many things to deliver on, and I'm feeling like shit. And I don't have the patience to help my son with his homework. I'm not packed for my trip to California. I have client emails to respond to. Wow, I'm just sucking right now. That's kind of where I was going with it. But I breathed and asked that question. What came was, Sage, take a nap. Actually, just take a little nap, drink some tea, and see what you can do when you wake up. And it was amazing. I literally gave myself permission to take a nap, and I'm not a napper. Like, I don't even usually like the way they make me feel. I usually feel groggy when I wake up, but my throat was raw. I was wiped out. And I knew that I really wanted to be well for this weekend away that I have coming up. I gave myself this nap, and it was like the kindest, most gracious, compassionate thing I could have done for myself. And when I woke up, lo and behold, it was what I needed. And I was able to really produce many of the things that I needed to produce in order to be at least at the bare minimum of thriving, right? Like, there was dinner and my child's homework got done and the most pressing emails got responded to. And, the packing idea in my head got in my mind. I figured out what I was going to pack, which is my first step. That was what it took for me to get out of that spirally thinking of, why can't I get it together? Or whatever it sounds like for you. Like, what's my problem? Why isn't this working? Why can't I get it together? Why haven't I figured this out yet? Why is this so hard? All of those are criticisms, self-judging, and meanness. It's like some people call it your inner mean girl. I just want to invite you to consider to expand your net of compassion. And I know you're a compassionate woman. When you expand it to include yourself, and ask yourself those questions of how can I show myself more grace in this moment? And where is there room for more compassion? So with that, I will sign off, and please be sure to head on over to sagebhabs.com and grab that resource around how to really ask for what you want and just join our community so that you never miss a podcast episode. I do not bombard your email inbox. I just make sure you know what's going on in our world, in the naked conversation world, and occasionally offer you the opportunity to do this work more deeply if it suits you. Much love. Thanks for being a part of this. If this is the kind of thing you love engaging with, and you know that the people in your life would love it too, and that you have women who are eager to be more real, to have more deep and authentic connections with each other, and to show up more powerfully in the world, please share the show with them. I'd love to have them be in this conversation with us. Until next time.
Thank you so much for listening to Naked Conversations. Yay! It really means the world to me every time you show up. And if you want to know more about how to work with me personally and my coaching, you can check that out over at sagebhabs.com. You can also get some great free resources over there about how to make powerful requests and many blog posts full of resources for living a naked life, as well as grab a copy of my book, Naked Communication, Courageously Create the Relationships You Really Want. And lastly, keep the conversation going with us over in the Facebook community, sagebhabs.com/Facebook, where we can keep talking about these super important and powerful topics of living a life fully expressed. Thanks again. See you next time.